Hello everyone, welcome back to SQL Edge, the place where we simplify SQL concept with real-world examples. In today's session, we are going to learn about one of the most commonly used and also one of the most misunderstood topics in the SQL Server, the SQL group by and a SQL having clause. By the end of this video, you will clearly understand what is meant by group by clause, how it works with aggregate functions, the difference between where and having clause, and we will see a few real-world business scenarios to make it super easy to remember the group by and having in SQL Server. So let's jump to the SQL Server Management Studio and we will see how the group by will work in a different data sets. So the group by clause, or we call this as a group by SQL function as well, right? So this what is meant by group by clause. So the group by clause in a SQL is used to group the rows that have same values in a specified columns into a summary rows, right? So for an example, let's say we are having customer data spread across multiple countries. So we want to see the count of customers in each of the country. So what we are going to do is we are going to collect the customer IDs from the same country, right? So wherever there is a country same, we are going to count the number of customers in each country. So simply what we are going to do is we are going to group the rows that have the same values. So wherever there is a country name is same, all those customers we are going to club together and we will getting the count of customer in a specific country. So the SQL group by clause will do the same thing. It will be used to group the rows that have same values in a specified columns into the summary row, right? So this group by clause is mostly used with aggregate functions like count, sum, average, max, and min, so that we can easily find out the aggregated data based on some column. Let's see the basic syntax for the group by clause. So this is how I have written out the syntax here for the group by clause. So the syntax contains select list. In the select list, we will be having the list of columns that need to be there in our output, right? So we know like select is used to retrieve the data. It is a DQL command. So whatever the columns we want in our output, that should be listed in select clause. Then from table name, if we have to filter the data, we can write the condition where we'll be writing the filter condition, but this is an optional for group by clause. It is not mandatory for the group by clause to have the where condition. Then we will be having the group by command. So group by command will be like we'll be writing group space by and then we'll be having the column name or column name. So we can group the data with a single column or multiple columns as well. Then we'll be having clause and then we are having order by clause. So this is the general syntax, overall syntax we'll be having for the query. Okay, normally for the group by clause only this much is also enough. Select columns from table group by, again name of the column. So this is the basic syntax we will be having for the group by clause. Okay, so let's look some example for this particular demo. We are going to see the sales table. Okay, we have already created the sales table in student database. So we are having we are having 5 columns for this sales table. We are having sale ID, product name, category of the product, quantity of the product, and total amount for that product. So this is how the sample data will look like. It is having the sales data. Okay, I think I was created a new table. So what I will do is I'll just drop and recreate the same table. Drop table. If exist sales, then create table and insert some sample data. Okay, the data is looking like this. We are having sale ID, product name, the product belongs to which category, the category name, quantity of the product, and total amount for that product. Okay, if you see the mobile is belongs to electronics category, it is having 2 quantity and the total amount for that 2 products is like 20,000. Again, we are having another product with the same category electronics, and the cost is also there 30,000. Okay. If you see, one more product is there, laptop, which is under same category with quantity 1, and it is having the total amount for that particular product, right? So we have this kind of data here, right? Now let's say you want to find out the total sale amount category wise. Okay, so you want to find out the sale amount for each category, right? So we know, like, under electronics we are having 3 products, so sum of all the amount should be calculated for the electronics. Sum of amount will be should be calculated for the clothing product. Okay, clothing category products. And then we are having one more category called footwear. So this is how we want to calculate the total amount. Okay, so if you just use the aggregate functions, right, sum of total amount, it will calculate the total sale amount. But make but just focus here, whatever the total amount we will be getting, this is not just the total amount for each category, right? So this will be in total for this entire table we'll be getting. So this is summing all the amounts and we'll be getting the sum of total amount. Okay, but what we want to have this total amount for each category. So again, we have to group this by category. So one group for the electronics, one group for the clothing, and another group for the footwear. So here is what the group by clause will be helpful. So what we are going to do here is we'll be getting the single value with just a sum function. So instead of that, we'll be using the group by function to group by the total amount for each category, right? So we'll include the category in the select list to identify the sum of total amount is related to which category. So category is there, and then we are having sum of total amount from sales table and group by category. So we are going to group the result based on the category. So if you see here, execute the query and you will see clothing is having 7,500, electronics is there with 1,10,000, and footwear is having 8,000. So this is how we can get the total sales amount for each category, right? Same way, let's say you want to see the total sale amount for the each product. Okay, currently we don't have any duplicated product, so we might get the unique records for each product. Okay, so we can calculate for each product what is the total sale amount we are having, and we can see we are getting the total sale amount for each of the product. Okay, so this is how we can get the result. So this query will group all the records based on their category and give the total sales for each group. This is what the output we have seen for this category wise data. Now let's say we want to calculate the total sales for each product and for each category, like the total sales per category per product. So that is also possible. We can use 2 columns in the group by clause to meet this criteria, meet this result set, right? So what it is getting now, for each category and each product will be getting a total sales amount. Under electronics there are 2 products, okay, and it will be having the unique records. So uniqueness will be defined based on the 2 columns because we want the total sales per category and per product. So this is what we will be getting per category per product, right? So now the SQL will group the data by both category and the product name, right? So what the SQL will do behind the scene. Behind the scene, the SQL will group the data by category first, and then it will group the data by product name first, and then it will simply apply the aggregate function on the total amount column, right? Think it like summarizing an Excel sheet using a pivot table. That's exactly what the group by will do in a SQL Server, right? So simply we are pivoting the data, having matching records into a summary rows. Okay, so like we can apply this group by clause to a single column as well as to a multiple columns as well. Okay, now let's say whatever the data we have filtered out here, we have grouped out here for the category for each product. each category we are having some total sales. Now you want to filter out only those categories, okay, whose whose total sale amount is more than 7,000. Okay, so how you will do that? Let's say this is your query, right? Or before that, let's say, yeah, this is your query we are having to get the total amount for each category, and you want to filter out the records where, let's say, the total sale amount is greater than or equal to 8,000, right? So you cannot simply use the where clause here, where sum of total amount is greater than or equal to 8,000. Okay, if you use this here, what you will get the result? It will throw an error saying like the aggregate may not appear in a where clause unless it is a subquery contained having clause, right? So simply what it is saying, we cannot use any aggregate function like mean, max, sum, count in the where clause. So to filter the data with aggregate functions, we have to use a SQL having clause. Okay, so having clause will be used to filter the data in a SQL server using the aggregate functions. So instead of where, you can use the having clause, having sum of total amount is greater than or equal to 8,000. But see the difference here. When we are using the having clause we are using after the group by clause. Okay, so this is an important thing. Whenever we are going to use the having clause, we have to use the having clause after the group by clause. Okay, what does it means? So the data will be filtered, or the data will be filtered after the grouping the data. Okay, it is not going to filter the line by line data. Having clause will not filter line by line. It will filter the grouped data. Okay, but on the other hand, let's say you just want to see the data for the electronics category. So what you will do? So you will write a where clause where category is equal to electronics, right? So what we are doing here, we are filtering the record before grouping the data. So okay, so this where clause will first is execute. It will filter the data from the sales table, okay, for only electronics category, and then whatever result we will get on that, the group by clause will be applied to get the total amount for each category, right? So like this, and the having will be applied after the grouping. Okay, so to remember this, for filtering the individual rows we use the where clause. This will be used before group by clause, and to filter the grouped data we'll be using the having clause, which will be used like after group by clause. Okay, here are some examples I have given. Let's say you want to see the count of orders per customer. Let's assume we are having a orders table and we are having customer ID and orders placed by that customer. There may be a multiple orders placed by a single customers, and you want to see how many orders has been placed by each customer. So we can use simple group by clause, right? So select customer ID and count of orders. Like here we are going to use the count because we don't want the sum or average. We want the count, number of orders per customer, right? So we'll be using the count aggregate functions to get the count and group by customer ID. So this group by customer ID will make sure we are counting the number of orders for each customer. So we are going to group the data based on a customer ID. This is one of the example. In example 2, I have given another scenario where we will be filtering the data. Now, whatever the customer count, for each customer, whatever the count of orders we got. Now, let's assume you want to filter the data. We want to find out only those customers who has been placed more than 5 orders. Okay, so let's say we want to find out the customers who have been placed more than 5 orders. So how we can use, we cannot use the where clause because we don't have any column which is having the value for total orders for each customer. So this is a calculated value, and this aggregate function to calculate the count we cannot use in the where clause. So we need to go with the having clause to filter the record, and we will use the having clause post group by clause. So select customer ID, count of order ID as a total orders, from orders group by customer ID, and having count of order ID greater than 5. So this query will filter the records. It will find out only those customers who has been placed more than 5 orders. Okay. I'm having two more examples with some different table. I'm having an employee table, and we want to see in each department how many, like for each department, what is the average salary the company is spending. This may be used by HRs to find out the average salary per department, right? So this query will give us the department wise average salary. If you see here, we are using some another aggregate function called average to get the average of the salary for each department. Okay, so each department, when we say, we need to mention the department name into the group by clause, right? So this will give you the department wise average salary. Okay, in a company, HRs can use this query to find out the departments which are getting higher salaries, right? So with this, they will calculate the average salary for each department. Let's say now you want to filter out only those departments where the average salary is greater than 50,000. Again, you will use the having clause to filter that data. Okay. Now let's see, we will see some common mistakes that can be done using while using the group by clause. Okay, so very first is selecting columns not in a group by clause or not in an aggregate function, right? So selecting columns, which means the columns listed in the select clause. Before the from clause, we'll be having the select clause. The columns listed in a select clause must be present either in a group by clause or in aggregate functions, right? So all the examples, if you see above, whatever the columns we have used in the select list, now here we are having two columns. So these two columns are either present in the group by clause or used with aggregate functions. We are having order ID that is used with aggregate function. We are having customer ID that is used in a group by clause. So whatever number of columns we are having in the select list, that should be either present in a group by clause or that should be used with the aggregate functions. Okay, so if you see here, we are having one errored out example. Select category, product name, and sum of total amount from sales and group by category. Now if you see here, I'm just grouping the data by category. So category is there in the select list, that is fine. Total amount is also there in the select list, that is used with aggregate functions, that is also fine. But the product name is there, which is not there in the group by clause or not in the aggregate function. So if I execute this query, it will obviously throw the error saying the column product name is invalid in select list because it is not contained in either aggregate function or a group by clause. Okay, so we have to make sure whatever the columns we are using in select list, that should be present either in a where clause, sorry, that should be present either in a group by clause or that should be a part of a aggregate function, right? If it is not the case, SQL Server will throw the error because the column listed in select list, that is not either a part of group by or not a part of a aggregate function. Okay, so we have to make sure we are writing a correct syntax. Another mistake we use is like we will be going to use the aggregate functions in a where clause. Okay, we cannot use the aggregate functions with a where clause like sum, count, mean, max. Okay, so whenever you have to filter the data based on aggregated value, you have to go with the having clause instead of the where clause. Okay, so this is what the common mistakes can be made. Let's summarize what we have learned in these sessions. Okay, so the group by clause we have seen, group by is used to group the data into the categories, right? It will be used to group the data in with a certain column value. The group by clause mainly used with aggregate functions like sum, mean, max, count, average, right? Then we have seen where and having, where used to filter the data before grouping on a row level, and having is used to filter the data after grouping, right, on a grouped data set. right? So we can think of a where clause as an filter on a rows and having clause as an filter on a summarized data, right? So that's it for today. That's it for the today's session, right? If this helped you to understand group by and having in a simple way, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the SQL Edge for more short, clear, and practical SQL learning videos. In the next video, we will learn about aggregate functions in depth and how they will work internally with the group by clause. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you all.